So in the blockchain community, we've heard this phrase thrown around a few times. Blockchain are the new digital nations. So in this video, we'll be looking at the rise and fall of real nations and try to see if there's any patterns that we can understand and overlay onto blockchain. At the end of this video, you'll be able to understand broadly patterns in the rise and fall of nations, and also how you can apply that to your blockchain investing decisions. And if you're new to this channel, this is what it's all about. Fundamental analysis of blockchain. Just think of it like kind of like Warren Buffett style value investing in blockchain. So with that said, guys, let's just jump right in. So to bring you this content today, I basically went away and did a bunch of research on 4 different empires in the past. And then all these empires, basically, they're different patterns and different characteristics and events that happened that led to each of their rises and falls throughout history. And what I'll do now is just bring you through those patterns through this little diagram here. So let's start by going through the rise. For the rise, there are basically 2 things that leads to the rise of an empire. And these are innovation and stability. So if you can see on this little image here, I've noted that stability here is a nice, just 2 lines. And then innovation is a star. Okay. And what I mean by innovation is basically new technologies, or the development of new technologies, which allows that empire or that network or that nation to sort of move faster or make decisions faster, or some way that helps them adapt to their environment in a faster way. So for example, shipbuilding, advanced artillery, new ways of organizing armies, steam engines, things like that. And then what I mean by stability is that usually you'll see that for the society to actually be able to innovate, they need stability first. Stability is aligned ideology between its citizens and also access to resources. And this results in stability, which the stability itself becomes a platform to innovate. Right? So what this image is saying is basically the nation in the middle has stability, and because of its stability, it also is able to innovate, which leads it to becoming resilient. So what happens next after this? So what happens next is basically because the middle nation has resilience, it has stability, and it has an innovation which other nations do not have. We see here that it expands to get all these other sort of territories, these other leaders, these other nodes. And we see here that the other 2 nations which were on the way to getting stability and innovation, they have lost some of their nodes. So if you look back here at the previous image here, see, because they have this innovation, they're able to grow or adapt faster or make decisions faster, which allows them to just capture more resources and grow further, right? So that generally is what leads to the rise of nations. Okay, so now we know this sort of a pattern for the rise. How does this relate to blockchain, Nathan? Like, why are you telling us this? So how does it relate? So you see, in blockchains, layer 1s are motivated to develop new capabilities to capture the mindshare of developers, right? Blockchains, they want developers, they want the hardware and the network effects that come with developers to join their network, right? They want that. They also want to encourage new user groups to start using applications built by those developers. And they want to encourage new users to acquire their tokens, right? So it's in the same way, blockchains, they want to innovate in a way that captures developers. which is the same thing as a nation. The nation wants to develop new ways to capture new resources, right? And an example we see happening today is the layer one wars, which is the wars between Ethereum and basically all the other layer one blockchains, which basically it's happening because Ethereum's scalability has been a bottleneck, and these other layer ones are innovating faster than Ethereum. And we see that today, people are migrating, or developers are migrating from Ethereum to these other chains, for example, Avalanche, Solana, Polkadot. Now, in terms of stability, how does that relate to blockchains? Well, in blockchains, we also want stability. Layer ones develop new ways to create and maintain consensus and provide security among different user groups, right? This all happens in an adversarial environment as well. We have competitors, right? We have people that want to defect or try to attack our network. So in the same way, nations also operate in an adversarial environment, and they also want to look for stability, right? And, we also see that different layer ones are used by different communities, right? So depending on the characteristics of that blockchain, different communities come to use that blockchain because they share similar ideology or sort of a similar, they want the characteristics of that blockchain, right? So for example, this is a financial environment. We know that, let's say this is R3 Corda. So R3 Corda is very popular among financial applications in the blockchain world. And we see that R3 Corda has captured a lot of the developers within that financial environment, right? Okay, so now we kind of understand the patterns for the rise of nations and how we could use that for blockchains. Let's go through the fall. So looking at the graph here, we see that over time, the other nations would catch up to the more successful nation and also basically innovate and achieve resilience in their own ways. And we see with the ruling hegemon, we see that over time, it gets so large and it competes with these other nations in a way that it loses its resilience. And basically what happens over time is that it loses those nodes and it regresses to a point where it becomes stable again, but it loses those nodes. And we see that the other nations catch up and they all sort of become equal in a way. So that is basically it. That is what happens. And we can boil this down to two different factors. So the first factor is the unalignment between the nodes. What we mean by unalignment is the unalignment of economic interests between different user groups, between different nodes, between different developers, or different citizens within the nation. So for example, in the Dutch, the French, the Spanish, they all had the same issue where they were basically very unfair to the local territories. They had unfair taxes. They did not share the profit in the trade equally between the outer territories, and they favored the central territories. So what I'm saying is the centralization meant that they treated the outer territories or the nodes unfairly. And what happens is the territories within a local region or area, they started to revolt against the centralized control. And over time, that is what happens. They lose the control of those territories. You see, they lose the control of those territories because it's unfair. And those territories go off to create their own organization, right? So how does this relate to blockchain? So what I explained here is that centralization leads to unalignment. So in blockchain, centralization, decentralization is always something we talk about. In blockchain, the communities that use a layer 1 are always changing. And also, the development of layer 1s themselves are always changing. This is because development is done in a decentralized and open source manner, and development is put forward by proposals of those communities, and those communities are always changing. So because it's always changing, those proposals put forward, they're not always aligned with each other. So, for example, one group may be more aligned or more powerful than these other groups. And the proposals that this group puts forward may not be aligned with this group. So in the same way, if we look at the empires, it's the same thing, right? Basically, the empires, because the rulers in I don't know, for example, France, they put some policies forward to say, hey, let's not share these profits with these guys because we are the rulers. So in blockchain, there may be one group which is more powerful than another and vote for a particular proposal which does not benefit these groups. And over time, those groups go to another blockchain or they create their own little blockchain, right? So, an example of this is the Bitcoin block size wars. This was the closest thing that led to a potential failure of Bitcoin. So some communities within Bitcoin argued to increase the block size, whilst others were more concerned with decentralization and security. So if we look back at this graph here, this image here, let's imagine that this is Bitcoin core, and then this is Bitcoin Cash here. So over time, we see that because they were unaligned, Bitcoin Cash group, they made their own little blockchain, and then Bitcoin core, they stayed as Bitcoin, right? So that's one example for you. The second factor which leads to the fall of nations is a repeated overextension of resources. So for example, wars, internal pressure, internal revolts, economic sanctions, conflict, this all consumes a lot of resources. And if we look at the graph here, let's say there's a war going on here, or there's some conflict going on here, or over here there's some conflict going on. So over time, because it keeps happening again and again and again and again, over time, that also leads to a fall or to a regression in that network. So that is the second factor that leads to the fall. And now let's go through how that relates to blockchain. So in blockchain, basically developers, users consume resources in the form of block space. And block space is just basically the ability to post a transaction on the blockchain at a desired speed, security, and access to that particular blockchain. And basically, if consumption of that block space is continuously overconsumed in unproductive ways, maybe due to hacks or unsustainable transaction volumes, then conflict can arise within that blockchain. So for example, we see this with Ethereum, right? With Ethereum, transaction speeds were not able to maintain their fast-growing community of users, which meant unpractically high transaction fees. And we see that this actually resulted in the migration of users from Ethereum to other L1s and L2s such as Solana and Polygon. So if you look at the graph, let's say this is Ethereum, because the block space is just way overconsumed in Ethereum, this meant that those users felt like they should go to another blockchain where they had better access to block space or better access to resources. So over time, this is exactly what happened with Ethereum. You see, if we take Ethereum to be the one in the center here, users are going to these other blockchains. So let's summarize all of this into some takeaways for you. So let's say you are trying to invest in Ethereum, but you're not really sure, maybe you like the look of Polkadot. So for the first takeaway, we know that innovation is an important factor to look at when investing in blockchain. We want to know that that particular blockchain is innovating faster than its competitors. So for example, let's take Ethereum and Polkadot. We know that changes to the network are done by proposals, right? So one way to measure how fast it's innovating is how many proposals the network or the developers can agree on and put forward. Also, what are the quality of those innovations? What will that innovation actually allow? Or what does that innovation actually mean for that network? So for example, if you see that Polkadot is publishing more proposals, they're getting more upgrades done on the network, and the quality of those upgrades are better than Ethereum, then over time, Polkadot should capture more developers. And over time, because there's more developers, more applications should be built on that network. And over time, more users should come to that network. The second thing to look at is basically the alignment of the community. Because we know, we looked at before, if there is unalignment, it leads to friction between user groups, and eventually the minority user group eventually leaves, joins a different network. What you want to look for is how well that blockchain defines its purpose. Because if its purpose is well defined, then the developers can understand, okay, this blockchain is for financial. This blockchain is for NFTs. This blockchain is for da-da-da. Because its purpose is defined, it attracts developers who are aligned with that purpose. And because all of those developers are aligned with that purpose, they're all aligned with each other. So, for example, in Ethereum and Solana, we see that Ethereum has a wide range of use cases, right? It's not built for a specific thing. But if we look at Solana, it's pretty much basically for financial applications, right? So we see that Solana actually may be better for developers who want to develop financial applications. So those developers go there. And then the third thing to look for is basically the standard decentralization, security, scalability. We want to see that that blockchain has a good control over its resources. It's not getting hacked. It's run in a very good way. Its management is done very well. You want to see that it is able to scale enough to meet the demands of its users, or else those users would go somewhere else. You want to see that it's decentralized enough to maintain alignment between its users. So it doesn't need to be 100% decentralized. It just needs to be decentralized enough for that particular use case or that particular market that that blockchain is operating in. Okay, so now that we kind of understand these different factors, we have some takeaways. In the next video, I will be taking these and mapping them onto real rise and falls of actual blockchain related projects. So I've got some examples here. So for example, we're going to be looking at Ethereum in 2017. We're going to be looking at Terra Luna. We'll probably look at Axie Infinity as well. And maybe we try look at some enterprise blockchain applications. So yeah, so that's it, guys. Thanks very much for joining. If you stayed till the end of the video, thank you very much. Hit the subscribe button. I'm just really enjoying doing this for you. And I'm trying something new. Obviously you can see that I'm on the screen now. Basically the problem with I was trying to create more content, but basically my bottleneck was editing and finding the actual content to put on the screen. So hopefully now this cuts down a lot of the editing, and I'm planning to do more whiteboard videos. So just a single whiteboard to explain everything, because that will cut a lot of just editing out. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. And yeah, I will see you next time. Thanks very much.